Imagine a world where the ocean's pressure is not the only thing that can crush you. Deep beneath the waves at a remote research station, there is an unspoken rule. Break it, and you will face a consequence far more terrifying than the crushing darkness outside. What chilling secret does this directive protect? My name is Dylan. I am 28 years old, and I used to believe that the deep sea held no mysteries that science could not unravel. I was wrong. Dead wrong. And what I experienced 3,000 feet below the surface of the Pacific Ocean changed everything I thought I knew about the limits of human understanding. Let me take you back to the beginning. To the moment when I first saw the Poseidon station through the porthole of our descent vessel. It hung there in the eternal twilight of the deep ocean like a steel spider, its modules connected by reinforced corridors that stretched out into the dark water. Lights blazed from every window, a defiant human presence in a realm that had never known sunlight. It looked futuristic, almost beautiful in its geometric precision, but there was something about it that made my stomach tighten even then. Something that whispered this place does not belong here. I had been selected for a 6-month rotation as a marine biologist studying bioluminescent organisms in extreme deep sea environments. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. The Poseidon station was operated by the Mariana Deep Research Initiative, a collaboration between several American universities and private research firms. We were pushing the boundaries of human habitation, living and working at depths that would crush an unprotected human body in seconds. The station could house 12 crew members comfortably, though our current rotation only had 9. 9 souls in a steel bubble, surrounded by millions of tons of water and the vast crushing darkness of the abyss. The descent took 4 hours. 4 hours of watching the sunlight fade from brilliant blue to deep indigo to black. 4 hours of feeling the weight of the ocean pressing down on us, even though our vessel was perfectly safe. My colleague, a geologist named Sarah, sat across from me. She had done 2 rotations already. "You will love it down there," she said, smiling. "It is like being on another planet. Everything is different. The quiet, the isolation, the creatures. You will see things nobody on the surface can even imagine." I smiled back, but I noticed something in her eyes. A flicker of something that might have been warning or maybe fear. "Any advice for a first-timer?" I asked. She paused, glancing at the pilot, then back to me. "Pay attention during orientation. The station director, Michaels, he will go over everything. The safety protocols, the emergency procedures, the rules." She emphasized that last word strangely. "Follow the rules, Dylan. All of them. Even the ones that seem unnecessary." Before I could ask what she meant, the pilot announced our approach and the conversation ended. The airlock cycled with a hiss that seemed to echo through my bones. Station Director Michaels greeted us in the main hub, a spherical chamber that served as the heart of Poseidon Station. He was in his late 50s with gray hair cut military short and eyes that had seen too many rotations in the deep. He shook my hand with a grip that was firm but cold. "Welcome to Poseidon, Dylan. Sarah, good to have you back." His voice was professional, controlled. "We will get you settled and then do a full orientation. Down here, knowing the rules is not just policy, it is survival." The station was more spacious than I expected. The main hub connected to 6 modules: living quarters, laboratories, medical, bay, engineering, storage, and the observation deck. Corridors linked everything, their walls lined with pipes and cables and status monitors that blinked in steady rhythms. The air smelled recycled, metallic, with an undertone of something else. Something damp and old, like the inside of a cave. My quarters were small but functional. A bunk, a desk, a locker, and a small porthole that looked out into absolute darkness. I unpacked quickly, my hands moving on autopilot while my mind processed the reality of where I was. 3,000 feet down. The pressure outside was over 90 atmospheres. If the hull breached, death would be instantaneous. I tried not to think about it. Orientation was held in the conference room adjacent to the main hub. All 9 crew members attended. Besides Michael, Sarah, and myself, there was Jennifer, our medical officer, Thomas and Elena, both engineers, Raymond, another biologist specializing in microbial life, and 2 others, Patricia and Kevin, who handled logistics and communications. Michael stood at the head of the table, a tablet in his hands. Behind him, a large monitor displayed a schematic of the station. "You have all been through basic DeepSea safety training," he began. "But Poseidon has specific protocols that you need to understand and follow without exception. Some of these will seem unusual. Some of them will seem superstitious. I do not care what you think of them. You will follow them. Lives depend on it." He paused, his eyes moving across each of our faces. "I am going to give you 9 rules. These are not suggestions. These are not guidelines. These are absolute requirements for living on this station." He tapped his tablet, and the first rule appeared on the monitor. Rule 1. Always count the number of crew members before entering the pressure chamber. There should only be your team, nothing more. The pressure chamber is used for deep-sea excursions, Michaels explained. Before any dive, the dive leader counts heads. We have 9 crew members. You count 9, not 8, not 10, 9. If you count wrong, you abort the dive and report to me immediately. No exceptions. A chill ran down my spine. Why would you ever count more than 9? Rule 2. If someone asks you to meet them in the decompression chamber alone, confirm the request in person first. The decompression chamber is adjacent to the airlock. It is isolated, soundproofed, and designed for one thing: gradual pressure adjustment. If you receive any message, any communication asking you to meet someone there, you find that person face to face and confirm before you go. If they deny sending the message, you report it to me. Michaels's voice was steady, but I could feel the tension in the room growing. Rule 3. Do not open any sealed compartment marked with a red handprint, no matter how old it looks. We have 6 sealed compartments throughout the station. They are marked clearly. Do not open them. Do not try to open them. Do not touch them. They are sealed for a reason, and that reason is not your concern. I glanced at Sarah. Her face was pale, her eyes fixed on the table. Rule 4. Do not follow wet footprints that lead away from the airlock. They do not belong to anyone on your crew. My breath caught. Michaels continued without pause. If you see wet footprints anywhere on the station outside of the immediate airlock area, you do not follow them. You do not investigate. You report them, and you go back the way you came. Rule 5. If you receive a message on the intercom in a voice you recognize, verify that person's location before responding. The intercom system connects all modules. If someone calls you over it and you know their voice, you confirm their physical location before you respond or comply with any request. This is non-negotiable. Rule 6. Do not touch any object that appears on your bunk that you did not place there yourself. If you find anything in your quarters that you did not put there, you do not touch it. You leave the room and you report it immediately. Rule 7. Never look up at the ceiling in the corridor between sections C and D after 3 a.m. This one made my skin crawl. The specificity of it, the time, the location. Section C is the laboratory module. Section D is storage. The corridor between them is 15 meters long. If you need to traverse it between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., you keep your eyes forward or down. You do not look up, for any reason. Rule 8. If you see a figure in an old diving suit standing motionless, do not make eye contact and back away slowly. Several crew members shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to ask what he meant, but his expression made it clear that questions were not welcome. Rule 9. Never open the laboratory freezer if you hear breathing coming from inside. The laboratory freezer is in Section C. It contains biological samples. If you approach it and you hear anything that sounds like breathing, respiration, exhalation, anything, you do not open it. You leave the lab and you seal the door behind you. Michael set down his tablet and folded his hands. These rules exist because of incidents that have occurred over the years. I will not discuss those incidents. I will only tell you this. Every single rule has been written in consequence. Follow them, and your rotation will be productive and safe. Break them, and you will face outcomes that I cannot protect you from. Are there any questions? Silence filled the room. Finally, Raymond raised his hand. What happens if we break a rule? Michaels looked at him for a long moment. You will find out, he said quietly. And you will wish you had not. Before we move forward, I want you to do something for me. If you are finding this story compelling, if the mystery is pulling you in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you are going to want to follow along with what happens next. And when this is over, I want you to comment below. Would you have followed these rules? Or would curiosity have gotten the better of you like it did for me? The first week passed in a blur of routine. I threw myself into my work, cataloging bioluminescent specimens retrieved by our remotely operated vehicles. The creatures of the deep were astonishing: translucent fish with needle teeth, jellyfish that pulsed with ghostly light, amphipods the size of dinner plates. Every sample was a window into an alien world that existed right here on Earth. But the rules haunted me. I found myself counting crew members compulsively, even when we were not near the pressure chamber. 9 people. Always 9. I avoided the decompression chamber entirely unless necessary. I gave the sealed compartments with their red handprints a wide berth, though I found myself staring at them sometimes, wondering what could possibly be inside that required such a warning. The wet footprints rule bothered me the most. It implied that something could leave the airlock, something that was not part of the crew. I tried to focus on my work, but the station itself seemed designed to unsettle. It creaked and groaned constantly under the pressure. Sounds echoed through the corridors at odd hours. Metallic clangs, hissing pipes, the distant thrum of the circulation systems. At night, lying in my bunk, I would hear footsteps passing my door. I would tell myself it was just another crew member, but sometimes the footsteps would stop right outside and I would hold my breath, waiting for a knock that never came. Sarah noticed my unease during our second week. We were in the lab together, examining a particularly strange species of deep-sea worm that seemed to emit a faint blue glow even after death. You are adjusting well, she said, not looking up from her microscope. Am I? I replied, surprised. You have not broken any rules yet. That is better than most first-timers. Has anyone ever broken them? Her hand stilled. For a moment I thought she would not answer. Yes, she said finally. Last rotation, a woman named Dr. Reeves, oceanographer. Brilliant mind. She thought the rules were superstitious nonsense. What happened to her? Sarah set down her instruments and turned to face me. Her eyes were haunted. She violated Rule 6. She found something on her bunk one night. A small object looked like a piece of coral, black and twisted. Instead of reporting it, she picked it up. She told me later that she wanted to study it, to understand where it came from. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. 3 days later, she started hearing things. Voices calling her name from empty rooms. She would spin around, convinced someone was behind her, but there was never anyone there. It got worse. She stopped sleeping, started talking to herself, and then one night, she walked into the airlock without a suit and cycled it. My blood went cold. She killed herself? We found her body floating outside the station the next morning. But Dylan, when we brought her back in, when we examined her, there were bruises on her arms. Handprints, like someone had grabbed her and pulled her into the airlock. Someone on the crew? Sarah shook her head. We were all accounted for. Every single person was in their quarters or the common areas. Nobody was near the airlock. Then who? That is the point, Sarah interrupted. We do not know. We will never know. That is why you follow the rules. Not because we understand them, but because the alternative is worse than anything we can imagine. It started small. 3 weeks into my rotation, I was working late in the lab. It was past midnight and most of the crew was asleep. I was alone, documenting a new species of bioluminescent squid larvae, when the lights flickered. Just once, a brief dimming, then back to normal. I looked up, frowning. The station's power supply was redundant and heavily shielded. Fluctuations were extremely rare. I made a mental note to mention it to Thomas in engineering, and went back to my work. 5 minutes later, it happened again. This time the light stayed dim for several seconds before slowly brightening, and in that dimness I heard something. A sound like metal scraping against metal, slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere behind me. I turned, my heart suddenly pounding. The lab was empty. The door was closed. The sound had stopped. Hello? I called out, feeling foolish. Is someone there? Silence. I stood slowly, walking toward the back of the lab where the storage units and the freezer were located. My footsteps echoed on the metal floor. The temperature seemed to have dropped, my breath misting slightly in the air. The scraping sound came again. This time I could locate it. It was coming from inside the freezer. I froze, Sarah's story flooding back into my mind. Rule 9. Never open the laboratory freezer if you hear breathing coming from inside. But I had not heard breathing. I had heard scraping. I stepped closer. The freezer was a large industrial unit, chest-style with a heavy insulated lid. It was labeled with biohazard warnings and specimen storage protocols. I put my hand on the lid, feeling the cold seeping through the metal. The scraping stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard it. Faint, almost imperceptible. Breathing, in and out. Slow, rhythmic. Like something was sleeping inside. I yanked my hand back as if the metal had burned me. My mind raced. This was Rule 9. I knew what I was supposed to do. Leave the lab. Seal the door. Report it. But I hesitated. This was a scientific research station. There had to be a rational explanation. Maybe the freezer's compressor was malfunctioning, creating sounds that mimicked breathing. Maybe there was condensation or ice buildup causing the scraping noise. I was a scientist. I could not just run from every unexplained phenomenon. I reached for the lid again, and then the intercom crackled to life. Dylan. It was Sarah's voice, but distorted, distant. Dylan, can you come to the decompression chamber? I need to show you something. I stepped back from the freezer, my hand still trembling. Rule 5. If you receive a message on the intercom in a voice you recognize, verify that person's location before responding. Sarah? I spoke toward the wall-mounted speaker. Where are you right now? Static answered me. Then after a long pause, the voice came again. In the decompression chamber. Please hurry. I found something you need to see. Something was wrong. The tone was off. The urgency felt manufactured. I left the lab quickly, sealing the door behind me as Rule 9 dictated. My hands were shaking as I navigated the corridors toward the living quarters. I needed to find Sarah. I needed to confirm this in person. The station felt different at night. The lighting was dimmed to simulate a day-night cycle, casting long shadows through the corridors. The creaking and groaning seemed louder, more insistent. As I walked, I passed one of the sealed compartments with its red handprint. In the dim light, the handprint seemed to glisten as if it were fresh. I found Sarah's quarters and knocked. No answer. I knocked harder. Sarah, are you in there? The door opened, and Sarah stood there in her sleeping clothes, her hair disheveled, her eyes confused. Dylan, what is wrong? It is the middle of the night. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by cold dread. Did you just call me on the intercom? I asked. What? No, I have been asleep for the past 2 hours. We stared at each other in the dim corridor light. Someone used the intercom, I said slowly. Someone who sounded exactly like you. They asked me to come to the decompression chamber. The color drained from Sarah's face. Rule 5, she whispered. You verified. Thank God you verified. What would have happened if I had just gone? She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. We need to wake Michaels. Right now. Michaels listened to my account with a grim expression. We were in his office, a small room off the main hub. Sarah stood beside me. It was 2 a.m. according to the wall chronometer. You did the right thing, Michaels said when I finished. Both in the lab and with the intercom. You followed the rules. But what is happening? I demanded. What is on this station? Michaels leaned back in his chair, his face haggard in the overhead light. I told you the rules were written in consequence, he said. What I did not tell you is why we continue to operate down here despite those consequences. He tapped a command on his computer and an image appeared on his monitor. It was a sonar scan, showing something massive in the trench below us, something that looked almost organic with branches or tendrils extending outward. 5 years ago, we discovered this structure at the bottom of the Challenger Deep. We thought it was a geological formation at first, volcanic maybe, but it is not. It is biological, or it was. We do not know if it is alive or dead, ancient or active. What we do know is that it affects things space-time. Perception. The station sits directly above it, and the longer we are here, the more pronounced the effects become. You're telling me there is some kind of alien organism down there? My voice was rising. And we are living on top of it? We do not know what it is, Michael said. But yes, essentially. And the rules exist to help us navigate the phenomena it creates. The anomalies, the manifestations. Manifestations? Sarah's voice was tight. The things you hear, the things you see, they are not hallucinations. They are real in a sense. They are projections, echoes, reflections of something vast and incomprehensible reaching up from the deep. The rules help us avoid direct interaction with those projections, usually. And if we break the rules, Michael's met my eyes. Then the protection breaks down, and you become vulnerable to direct contact, to whatever it wants to show you. Or do to you. I felt sick. Why are we still here? Why do not we evacuate? Because if we abandon this station, if we stop observing and documenting what is down there, we lose our only chance to understand it. And if something that powerful exists in our ocean, we need to understand it before it decides to rise, Michael said heavily. I should have requested an immediate transfer. I should have demanded to be sent back to the surface on the next supply vessel. But I did not. Maybe it was scientific curiosity. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe, and this is what scares me most, maybe it was already affecting me, already pulling me deeper into its influence. The incidents escalated over the following week. Thomas reported finding wet footprints leading from the airlock to the engineering section. He followed them despite Rule 4 because they stopped at a critical pressure regulator. When he reached the regulator, the footprints simply ended. There was no water pooled around them, no trace of where they had come from or where they had gone. The regulator itself was fine, but Thomas swore the temperature in the engineering bay dropped 20 degrees while he was there. Patricia violated Rule 7. She was carrying equipment through the corridor between sections C and D at 3:15 a.m. when her flashlight failed. In the darkness, she instinctively looked up. She would not tell us what she saw, but she stopped speaking for 3 days afterward. When she finally did speak again, all she would say was, "It is watching us from above," before lapsing back into silence. Elena heard breathing from the laboratory freezer and, like me, initially thought it was mechanical. Unlike me, she opened it. The screaming brought half the crew running. We found her collapsed outside the lab, hyperventilating, her eyes wide and unseeing. When she finally calmed down enough to speak, she described what she had seen. The freezer had been full of ice as expected, but suspended in that ice were faces. Human faces, dozens of them. All frozen mid-scream, and one of them had been hers. Michael sedated her and confined her to the medical bay. Jennifer, our medical officer, told me privately that Elena's psychological evaluation showed signs of acute trauma. She was being prepped for emergency evacuation. She will never dive again, Jennifer said sadly. Whatever she saw broke something fundamental in her, but it was my violation that brought everything to a head. It happened on my 4th week. I was exhausted, running on maybe 3 hours of sleep per night. The station's sounds had become intolerable. Every creak was a footstep. Every groan was a voice. I was jumpy, paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder. I was in my quarters trying to rest when I saw it, on my bunk. Right where my pillow should have been, an object. It was small, maybe the size of a fist, and it appeared to be made of some kind of organic material, black twisted, covered in what looked like tiny polyps or nodules. It pulsed very faintly as if it had a heartbeat. Rule 6. Do not touch any object that appears on your bunk that you did not place there yourself. I knew the rule. I had memorized all 9 rules. But I was so tired, so desperate for answers, and this impossible thing was right there. If I could just study it, understand it, maybe I could make sense of everything that was happening. I reached out. The moment my fingers touched it, the temperature in my quarters plummeted. My breath fogged in great clouds. The lights flickered and died, plunging me into absolute darkness. And then I heard the voices. Dozens of them, hundreds, all whispering my name in overlapping echoes that seemed to come from every direction at once. Dylan. 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 Some were familiar. My mother, my college roommate, Sarah. Others were alien, wrong, speaking with tones that no human throat could produce. The darkness itself seemed to move, to writhe. I tried to drop the object, but it had fused to my hand, the polyps extending tiny filaments into my skin. The pain was exquisite, like being injected with liquid fire. I screamed. The door to my quarters burst open and light flooded in. Michaels and Sarah were there, and behind them Raymond. Michaels took one look at my hand and cursed. "Hold him down," he barked. They grabbed me, pinning me to the bunk. I was thrashing, the voices in my head growing louder, more insistent. Michaels pulled out a knife and without hesitation cut. The blade sliced through the filaments and black ichor spurted from the object. It released my hand and fell to the floor, where it immediately began to dissolve into a puddle of thick, oily liquid. The voices stopped. The temperature returned to normal. I collapsed, sobbing, cradling my wounded hand. Burns covered my palm where the polyps had attached, arranged in a pattern that looked disturbingly deliberate. Almost like writing. "Get him to medical," Michaels ordered. "Now." Jennifer treated my burns in silence. The pattern had already begun to scar, the tissue raised and discolored. When she was done, she handed me a mirror. "You need to see this," she said quietly. I looked at my palm. The scars formed letters. 3 words in a language I did not recognize but somehow understood. "It knows you. What does that mean?" I whispered. "It means," Michaels said from the doorway, "that you have been marked. Whatever is down there, whatever the structure is, it is now aware of you specifically. You have been noticed." "What happens now?" "I do not know. Every violation has different consequences. But Dylan, you cannot stay here. You are being evacuated with Elena on the next supply run. That is in 36 hours. Until then, you do not leave the common areas. You do not go anywhere alone. And for God's sake, you do not break any more rules." That night, I did not sleep. I could not. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt those filaments boring into my skin. I heard those voices whispering my name. At 3 a.m., unable to stand my quarters any longer, I went to the common area. It was empty except for Sarah, who sat at one of the tables with a cup of coffee, staring out the observation window into the black water. "Cannot sleep either?" I asked, sitting beside her. "Never can, my last week on rotation," she said. "I always feel like I need to watch. To keep guard. Against what?" She gestured at the darkness beyond the glass. "Against that. Against whatever is out there looking back at us." I looked at the window. The station's external lights illuminated maybe 30 feet of water, before the darkness swallowed everything. But in that illuminated zone, I could see particles drifting past. Marine snow, plankton, the occasional small fish drawn to the light. And then I saw something else, a figure. It was standing just at the edge of the light where visibility faded to black. It wore an old-style diving suit, the kind with a brass helmet and heavy canvas body. It stood absolutely motionless, as if it had been there for hours. For years. "Sarah," I whispered, "do you see that?" She followed my gaze and went rigid. "Oh no." Rule 8. If you see a figure in an old diving suit standing motionless, do not make eye contact and back away slowly. But I had already seen it, and as we watched, its helmet began to turn, slowly, deliberately, until the dark glass of its faceplate was aimed directly at us. "Do not look at it," Sarah hissed. "Do not make eye contact. Move, slowly." We stood and began to back away from the window. The figure remained motionless, but I could feel its attention on us. Heavy, crushing, like the pressure of the deep ocean itself focusing into a single point of awareness. We were almost to the corridor when the figure raised one arm, slowly, agonizingly, until it was pointing directly at me. At the same moment, every light in the station went out. In the absolute darkness, I heard Sarah scream. I heard running footsteps. I heard the groaning of the station's hull as pressure shifted. And beneath it all, I heard something else. A sound like breathing, fast and slow, rising from the depths below us. The emergency lights kicked on, bathing everything in red. The figure was gone. But pressed against the observation window, impossible in the external pressure, was a handprint. A red handprint, exactly like the ones marking the sealed compartments throughout the station. Michael's voice crackled over the intercom. "All crew to the main hub, immediately. This is not a drill." We gathered in the main hub, all 9 of us. Elena was there too, heavily sedated but conscious. Patricia sat in the corner, rocking slowly, her eyes unfocused. The rest of us stood or sat in various states of fear and exhaustion. Michael stood in the center, his face grim. "We are evacuating," he announced. "All of us. The supply vessel is being rerouted. It will be here in 8 hours. We are abandoning Poseidon Station." Shock rippled through the group. Raymond spoke first. "Why, what has happened?" "The structure below us has become active," Michael said flatly. "Sonar shows movement, growth. Something is changing down there, and I am not willing to risk this crew to find out what." But the research, Thomas protested. Everything we have worked for is not worth your lives, Michaels cut him off. We have learned what we needed to learn. This place, this structure, it is not meant to be studied up close. It is not meant to be touched. We were arrogant to think we could operate here without consequences. He looked at me. Dylan's violation triggered something. A response. The structure knows we are here now. It knows we have been observing it. And it is reaching back. What do you mean, reaching back? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. The sealed compartments, Michael said. We are opening them. You all need to see what we have been protecting you from. He led us to the nearest sealed compartment, the one in the corridor between the living quarters and the main hub. The red handprint on its door seemed to pulse in the emergency lighting. Michaels input a code on the keypad, and the door hissed open. Inside was a small room, maybe 10 feet square. The walls were covered in handprints, hundreds of them, all red, all different sizes. Some looked human, others did not. And in the center of the room, suspended from the ceiling by chains, was an old diving suit. The brass was corroded, the canvas rotted, but I recognized it immediately. It was the same suit I had seen outside the observation window. This was here when we established the station, Michael said. We found it floating outside, tethered to a previous research installation from the 1960s. That installation was abandoned. All crew lost. When we brought this suit inside, the handprints started appearing. Every night, one new handprint, always in the sealed compartments. We learned quickly not to open these rooms. Those who did started seeing the figure, started hearing voices, started violating the other rules. And the suit? Sarah asked. What is inside it? We do not know, Michaels admitted. We have never opened it, and we never will. He sealed the compartment and led us through the station, opening each sealed room in turn. Each one contained something impossible. One had a freezer full of that black ice Elena had described, faces frozen in eternal screams. Another had walls covered in writing, the same 3 words repeated over and over in dozens of languages. It knows you. The final sealed compartment was in Section D, the storage module. When Michaels opened it, the smell hit us first. Saltwater, decay, the deep ocean. Inside, the room was flooded. 6 inches of dark water covered the floor, and in that water, leading from the far wall to the door, were wet footprints. They were not human. They had too many toes. The proportions were wrong. This room floods every night at 3 a.m., Michael said. The water comes from nowhere. It simply appears, and something walks through it. We sealed it 5 years ago, and we have never opened it since. Until now. As we stood there, the water began to ripple. Not from any external source, just rippling as if something large was moving beneath its surface. And then, very slowly, a shape began to rise from the water in the back of the room. Close the door, Sarah whispered. Close it now. Michael slammed his hand on the keypad and the door sealed. But not before I saw what was rising. It was tall, impossibly tall, and it was wearing the tatters of an old diving suit. Its helmet turned toward us, and through the dark glass I saw eyes. Too many eyes. All of them fixed on me. The mark on my palm began to burn. If you have made it this far, I need you to do something. Share this video. Share it with everyone you know who has ever been curious about the deep ocean, about what lies beneath, because what I am about to tell you needs to be heard. It needs to be understood. And maybe, just maybe, it will save someone else from making the same mistakes we did. Hit that share button. Leave a comment telling me what you think is really down there, and subscribe, because this story is not over yet. The 8 hours until evacuation were the longest of my life. We stayed together in the main hub, none of us willing to be alone. The station groaned and creaked around us, the sounds now unmistakably purposeful. Footsteps echoed through sealed corridors. Voices called names over the intercom. The observation windows showed shapes moving in the darkness beyond the lights. At 4:47 a.m., the intercom crackled to life, but it was not a voice that came through. It was breathing, deep, rhythmic. The same breathing I had heard coming from the laboratory freezer, except now it was coming from every speaker in the station simultaneously. The sound filled the hub, resonating in our chests, making it hard to draw our own breaths. Michael shut down the intercom system, but the breathing continued. It was coming from the walls themselves, from the very structure of the station. It is inside, Patricia whispered, speaking for the first time in days. It has always been inside. We built this place with its metal. We shaped our home from its bones. That is impossible, Raymond said, but his voice shook. The station was constructed on the surface, then lowered. The materials came from salvage, Thomas interrupted, realization dawning on his face. The hull plating, some of the support structures. They came from the previous installation. The one from the 1960s. Oh God, we have been living inside a piece of the old station this whole time. Michaels closed his eyes. I know. The project managers knew. It was cheaper than fabricating everything new. They thought enough time had passed. They thought it would be safe. Safe? Sarah laughed, a sound on the edge of hysteria. You built a new station using metal that had been exposed to that thing for decades? Metal that had absorbed its presence, its influence? What did you think would happen? We thought we could contain it with the rules, Michael said quietly. We thought if we understood the patterns, the behaviors, we could coexist. We were wrong. At 6:23 a.m., the pressure alarms began to sound. But our instruments showed normal levels. The alarms were not warning us about the water outside. They were warning us about something else. A different kind of pressure. The weight of attention from something vast and ancient, pressing down on the station from below. Jennifer ran to the medical bay to check on Elena, but returned within minutes, her face white. She is gone, Jennifer said. The room is empty. The door was still locked from the outside, but she is gone. Where could she have gone? Raymond demanded. I do not know, Jennifer said, but there was water on the floor. And footprints. The same kind from the sealed compartment. The mark on my palm burned hotter. I looked down and saw that it had changed. The 3 words were still there, but now there were more. Additional scars forming in real time. The tissue rising and splitting as new letters carved themselves into my flesh. It knows you, it wants you, it will take you. Dylan, Sarah grabbed my arm, staring at my hand in horror. What is happening to you? Before I could answer, the lights went out again. Not just the emergency lights this time, everything. Total darkness, total silence. Even the breathing had stopped. And then, from somewhere in that darkness, I heard Elena's voice. Dylan, she called. Dylan, I need you to come to the pressure chamber. We are going to count. We need to count before the dive. It was Rule 1. Always count the number of crew members before entering the pressure chamber. Do not respond, Michaels hissed in the darkness. That is not Elena. But Elena's voice came again, closer now. Dylan, please. We need 9. We always need 9. But we are missing 1. Come help me count. Come to the pressure chamber. I felt myself standing, felt my legs moving toward the sound of her voice. The mark on my palm was no longer burning. It was pulling, tugging me forward like a hook embedded in my flesh. Hands grabbed me. Sarah and Thomas holding me back. Fight it, Sarah urged. Whatever it is showing you, whatever it is promising you, fight it. The lights flickered back on and I saw her. Elena stood at the entrance to the corridor leading to the pressure chamber. But it was not really Elena. Her skin had taken on a strange translucence, like she was made of the same material as the deep-sea creatures I had been studying. Her eyes were completely black, reflecting the lights with an oil-slick sheen. And when she spoke, her mouth did not move quite right. The words came from somewhere behind her teeth. We have been waiting so long, she said. Waiting for someone marked. Someone chosen. The others were mistakes, accidents, but you, Dylan, you touched it willingly. You opened yourself. And now the door can never be closed. What do you want? I heard myself ask. To rise, she said simply. To leave the crushing dark. To breathe the air above. But we cannot come alone. We need an anchor, a bridge, a sacrifice offered freely. I did not offer anything. You touched the gift. You accepted the mark. That is offering enough. She smiled, and her teeth were too sharp, too many. Come to the pressure chamber, Dylan. Come and help us count. There should be 9. But there will be 10. There will always be 10 now. And the 10th will open the way. Michael stepped between us, his body blocking Elena from my view. You cannot have him, he said firmly. You cannot have any of us. We are leaving this place, and you will remain in the deep where you belong. Elena tilted her head at an impossible angle. Leaving? She laughed. Station Director Michaels, you of all people should know. No one leaves the deep. Not really. A part of you always stays. A part of you always remembers. And when you are alone in the dark, when the pressure of your life above threatens to crush you, you will hear us calling, and you will want to come back. She turned and walked down the corridor toward the pressure chamber. Her footprints left water on the metal floor. And in that water, for just a moment, I saw faces. Dozens of them. All the previous crew members who had violated the rules. All the people who had been taken over the years. They were not dead. They were down there. In the structure. Part of it forever. The supply vessel, Raymond said urgently. How long? Michaels checked his watch with shaking hands. 90 minutes. We just need to hold on for 90 more minutes. But the station had other plans. At 7:45 a.m., the hull breach alarms began to scream. Section D, the storage module. The same section where we had opened the flooded, sealed compartment. Water was pouring in. Seal the section, Michaels ordered. Evacuate everyone to the main hub and seal all connecting corridors. Thomas and Raymond ran to initiate the emergency bulkheads. The rest of us gathered what supplies we could and retreated to the main hub. I could hear the water rushing through the corridors, an impossible amount of it, far more than a simple hull breach could explain. The bulkhead slammed shut with a hydraulic hiss. We were now trapped in the main hub and the modules directly connected to it. Section D was lost, and with it a quarter of our station. That water did not come from outside, Jennifer said, stating what we all knew. The pressure readings show the hull is intact. That water came from somewhere else. From below, Sarah said. From the structure. It is flooding us on purpose. The supply vessel, I said. Can it still dock if the station is partially flooded? Michaels pulled up the docking protocols on his tablet. His face fell. Not if the main airlock is compromised. The vessel needs a pressurized seal. If the water reaches the airlock corridor, we will have no way to evacuate. Then we go to them, Thomas said. We suit up. We use the emergency dive equipment. We swim to the surface if we have to. From 3,000 feet? Raymond shook his head. The decompression alone would take days. We would die from nitrogen narcosis before we made it halfway. And then what do we do? Patricia's voice was small, childlike. What do we do? Before anyone could answer, the lights in the hub began to flicker in a pattern. On-off, rhythmic, deliberate, like a heartbeat. And with each pulse of light, I saw them. Figures standing around us in the hub. Transparent, flickering, wearing old diving suits. Wearing lab coats. Wearing station uniforms from decades past. Dozens of them. All standing motionless. All staring at me. You see them too? Sarah whispered. I nodded. We all did. One of the figures stepped forward. It was an old man in a 1960s-era naval uniform. His face was weathered, his eyes kind, but infinitely sad. You were warned, he said, his voice echoing strangely. We all were warned. The rules exist because we broke them first. We learned what happens when you violate the boundaries, when you disrespect the deep. Who are you? Michaels asked. Commander Robert Hayes, United States Navy. I established the first research installation here in 1967. We thought we were advancing science, exploring the final frontier. But we were trespassing. This place, this depth, it was never meant for human eyes. Never meant for human touch. What is it? I asked. What is the structure? Hayes looked at me and I saw pity in his ghostly eyes. We do not know. A living thing. A dead thing. Something in between. Something that existed before the ocean itself, perhaps. Sleeping. Dreaming until we woke it. Until we touched it. Until we marked ourselves. He gestured to my palm. You carry the mark now. You open the door, and it will not close until you close it yourself. How? I demanded. How do I close it? There is a way, Hayes said slowly. One person marked. One person willing. One person descending to the source, to offer themselves, to seal the door from within. That is how I should have done it. That is how all of us should have done it. But we were cowards, we ran. We left the door open, and more came. More touched. More marked. An endless cycle of violation and consequence. You are asking me to kill myself, I said flatly. I am asking you to sacrifice, Hayes corrected. There is a difference. In death you are gone. In sacrifice you become part of something greater. A guardian, a lock. You would stand between the deep and the surface forever, keeping the door closed, keeping it safe. No, Sarah said fiercely. Absolutely not. There has to be another way. There is not, Hayes said. The mark has already begun the transformation. Look at your friend, Dylan. Look at what you are becoming. I looked down at my hands. The burns were spreading. The scars were moving up my arms, forming patterns and words in languages that hurt to read. And beneath my skin I could see something dark moving, something that was no longer entirely human. "How long do I have?" I asked quietly. "Hours," Hayes said. "Maybe less. The transformation accelerates once it begins. Soon you will be like Elena, a vessel, a door, and through you it will reach the surface. It will spread. To other stations, to submarines, to ships, to anyone who dives deep enough. The ocean will no longer be safe for humanity." The weight of it crashed down on me. The scope, the horror, all because I had been curious. All because I had touched something I should not have touched. "There is a submersible in the docking bay," Michael said slowly. "A one-person deep research vehicle. It can reach the bottom of the trench. It can reach the structure." "No," Sarah grabbed my arm. "Dylan, you do not have to do this. We can find another way. We can—" "There is no other way," I said, and I was surprised at how calm my voice sounded. "You heard him. It is me or everyone. Every diver, every researcher, every person who ever goes into deep water." I opened the door. "I have to close it." I looked at Michael's. "The supply vessel. When it arrives, you get everyone out. You seal this station. You drop it into the trench. You destroy every piece of salvaged material from the old installation. And you never come back here. You tell them the research is over. You tell them the deep is not ours to explore." Michaels nodded slowly, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I will, I promise." I turned to Sarah. She was crying openly now. "I am sorry," I said, "for dragging you into this, for not listening to you from the beginning." "You did not know," she said, pulling me into a fierce hug. "None of us really knew. Not until it was too late." I pulled away gently and looked at the ghost of Commander Hayes. "What do I do? When I reach the bottom? You will know," he said. "The structure will show you." "And Dylan?" "Thank you, for being braver than I was." He faded, and with him all the other ghosts. The lights stabilized. The breathing stopped. For a moment the station was quiet. Then the water alarm sounded again. The flooding was spreading. We were running out of time. The submersible was a small sphere of titanium and glass, barely large enough for one person. Michaels helped me into the pilot's seat and ran through the controls. It was simple enough. Descend, navigate. The structure would be impossible to miss on sonar. "The communication system will work for about the first 1,000 feet, Michael said. "After that, you will be on your own." "I understand." He hesitated, then held out his hand. I shook it. "You are saving us all," he said quietly. "I hope you know that." "I hope it is enough," I replied. Sarah appeared at the hatch, her face streaked with tears. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "Then do not say anything," I told her. "Just promise me you will keep diving, keep exploring, keep pushing boundaries, just more carefully, with more respect. I promise." She kissed my forehead, then stepped back. Michael sealed the hatch, and I was alone in the sphere. The docking bay flooded, and the external clamps released. I activated the descent system, and the submersible began to sink. At first, I could still see the station above me, its lights growing smaller as I descended. The communication system crackled to life. Sarah's voice. "Dylan, can you hear me?" "I can hear you." "The supply vessel just made contact. They will be here in 20 minutes. We are going to make it." "Because of you." "Good," I said. "That is good." The depth gauge ticked past 1,000 feet. 1,500. 2,000. The lights of the station were gone now. I was surrounded by absolute darkness except for the submersible's external floods. At 3,000 feet, the communication system hissed with static and went silent. I was truly alone now. At 4,000 feet, I began to see things moving in the darkness beyond my lights, shapes that were too large to be fish, too purposeful to be currents. At 5,000 feet, the sonar picked up the structure. It was massive. Impossibly massive. The sonar could not even determine its full size. It stretched out in all directions, a web of organic architecture that seemed to have no beginning and no end. And it was moving, growing, reaching upward toward the distant surface. My palm burned like fire. The marks had spread across my entire body now. I could see them through my clothes, glowing faintly in the darkness. I was covered in words, in names, in warnings. At 6,000 feet, I began to understand what the structure was. It was not an organism. Not exactly. It was a collection. A gathering. Every person who had ever been taken by the deep. Every sailor lost to the ocean. Every diver who never returned. Every soul claimed by drowning. They were all here, part of this vast neural network of consciousness and memory and longing. The deep was lonely, and it collected us, kept us, made us part of itself. At 7,000 feet, I reached the bottom of the trench. The structure was everywhere. It covered the seafloor like a forest, its branches reaching upward, its roots digging into the earth itself. And at its center I saw the source. A door, not a physical door. A crack, a wound in reality itself. And through that wound I could see something beyond. Something vast and dark and full of eyes. The true deep. The place beneath the place. The foundation of all oceans. And it was trying to push through. I understood now. The structure was not trying to rise. It was trying to hold the door closed. Every person it had taken, every consciousness it had absorbed was being used as a lock, as a seal, keeping that thing beyond from entering our world. But we kept touching it, kept disturbing it, kept breaking its concentration with our curiosity and our rules and our violations. We were weakening the lock, making the door easier to open. I brought the submersible as close as I could to the structure's center. The mark on my palm was glowing now, pulsing in rhythm with the structure itself. I knew what I had to do. I opened the hatch. The pressure should have killed me instantly, should have crushed me into paste. But the mark protected me. The transformation was nearly complete. I was no longer entirely human. I was becoming something that could exist in this place, something that could survive the pressure of the true deep. I swam toward the door, my body moving in ways that should have been impossible. The structure reached for me, its branches wrapping around my limbs, pulling me in, not violently, gently like a mother welcoming a child home. I touched the door with my marked palm, and I felt myself spread. My consciousness expanded, joining with all the others. I could feel them now. Hayes, Elena, all the crew members from all the stations throughout the decades. We were together. We were one. We were the lock. And we were holding. The thing beyond pushed against us, testing our strength. But we pushed back. Thousands of minds, thousands of wills, united in purpose. We would not let it through. We would guard this door forever. I felt my body dissolving, becoming part of the structure. It did not hurt. It felt like letting go of a weight I had been carrying my entire life. The pressure of expectation. The crushing need to understand everything. Down here in the deep, there was no need for understanding. Only purpose, only duty. My last human thought was of Sarah, of the crew, of everyone on the surface who would never know what I had done, who would never understand that beneath their feet, beneath the ocean, beneath everything they knew, we were here, watching, guarding, holding the door closed, forever. The official report stated that the Poseidon station experienced catastrophic structural failure due to unprecedented pressure anomalies. All crew members were successfully evacuated except for one marine biologist, Dylan, who was lost when his emergency submersible descended past safe operational depths. His body was never recovered. The station was scuttled. The site was marked as off-limits to all future research operations. The Mariana Deep Research Initiative was quietly dissolved. Sarah kept her promise. She continued to dive, to research, to explore. But she did it differently now. With respect, with caution. And she never went deeper than 2,000 feet. Some boundaries, she learned, are meant to be respected. She kept a small memorial on her desk, a piece of metal salvaged from Poseidon Station before it was dropped. And sometimes, late at night, when she was alone in her lab, she would hold that piece of metal and swear she could feel a pulse, a rhythm, like a heartbeat, like someone far below was still alive, still watching, still guarding. And she would whisper, "Thank you, Dylan, thank you for closing the door." In the deepest part of the ocean where no light has ever reached, where the pressure would crush steel and stone alike, something watches. Not with malice, not with hunger, but with purpose. The door remains closed, the lock remains strong, and the rules remain unbroken, for now. So let me ask you, after everything you have heard, would you have followed those rules? Would you have resisted the temptation to touch that object, to open that door to satisfy your curiosity? Or would you have done what I did? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Share this story with anyone who has ever wondered what lies in the darkest depths of our oceans. And subscribe because there are more stories like this, more warnings, more rules that exist for reasons we can barely understand, The deep is vast, the deep is patient, and the deep is always watching. Remember that the next time you look at the ocean, something might be looking back.